I guess it's live. Clip this guy on. Doesn't like the belt. There it goes. I guess we got a few minutes, right? I got a couple of maps I printed. Maybe I'll hand those out. Okay. All right, let me get my ducks in a row here. Well, thank you, everybody. Kevin asked if I could just cover tonight. He's at Living Waters, pastor's conference this week. So welcome to everybody online as well, or tuning in, I guess you could say. So I was when Kevin asked last week, I just was thinking what, anything would come to mind. And this verse, just Matthew 16:13 through 20, kept kind of coming to mind. I just thought, I'll read through it. This is a New King James Version. I looked at different versions. I kind of wanted somewhat of I hate to say a watered-down version, but one that kind of flowed more like a sentence. But New King James is pretty good. This is chapter 16, verses 13 through 20. I'll read it out loud so as we go down through. So, verse 13, when Jesus came into the region of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, saying, "Who do men say that I, the Son of Man, is?" Right? What a critical question. So some say John the Baptist, some Elijah, and others Jeremiah, or one of the prophets. And then verse 15, he said to them, "But who do you say that I am?" Simon Peter answered and said, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." And in verse 17, Jesus answered and said to him, "Blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father who is in heaven. And I also say to you that you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church. And the gates of Hades will not prevail against it. I'll give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven." That's Matthew 16. Bob, you couldn't give a couple over there too, could you? A couple of maps. Thought we could look at the map too as we go along. What stands out here to you folks? Anything particular as you read through that?
They didn't know who he was.
Yeah, that's right. Amazing revelation right at the time. But, yeah, good point, Steve. What struck me was Caesarea Philippi, as I read through. Why there, and where is that, and what's its significance? One thing I've learned from being under Pastor Kevin's ministry is he always looks at the back door of these verses and finds out what's the situation going on, what's the climate. I thought reading this lightly that it was the church in Philippi, but that's a different place altogether. That's in Greece, that Paul established in Acts. So this is actually, Caesarea Philippi was an ancient Roman city. It's located at the southwestern base of Mount Hermon. Now, if you look at that map, I had to shrink them down so I could get them on a single sheet of paper. If you look up in the top of the map on the right, on the left, you see the mount sequence is a little kind of identifier where it says, small print, Caesarea Philippi. So it's at the base of a mountain range. The northern part of Israel It's currently the architectural site of Golan Heights. So if you look at the map on the right, where it says Golan Heights, it's captured from Syria in 1967. You can see that region that we now know as the Golan Heights, right? It's a controversial area. President Trump recently turned over some of that land to Israel. I don't know the history there, but we know there was 2 major wars there in 1973 against Israel and the Syrians. I also discovered, looking at this, my grandparents were only 30 miles from this site, which is kind of interesting. They came from Damascus. So I felt like, as I read through here, that it was a little more kind of like home. I don't know if that home, if that even means anything, but hope to think they weren't the pagans that were there. They probably were, more than likely. But let's go down, let's continue. So it's here that the great temple of Augustus in 19 BC was built to honor his Caesar at the time, was the first Roman emperor from 27 BC to his death in AD 14. So there was a major worship site here for Caesar, the first Roman emperor. The temple for Caesar was in front of the caves where the Greek god Pan lived. So this was a major god in this area of the Greek and the Romans. One of the 3 temples in Israel that Herod constructed under Caesar Augustus to worship him in his honor. So Herod was the Roman king of Judea, right, as you may or may not know. He willed this region to his son Philip when he died in 4 BC. So this is a little bit before Jesus was there with the disciples, who then built the city to be the capital in honor of Caesar. So this was a major stopping point at Mount Hermon. Prior to the Romans, about 300 years prior, the Greeks had it, Alexander the Great. He had conquered that area, and he built a number of sanctuaries in this very place where Jesus had the disciples standing, to worship the god Pan again. In fact, the term pan flute comes from that god. Have you ever heard the term pan flute? That's actually kind of has connections here. Let's just say, as I read through this, the history of this place, let's just short by saying there was some disgusting things that went on there that I wouldn't mention. The cave was a main attraction for the Hellenistic pagan worship, and animal sacrifices were done there regularly. They would throw the animals into the water. There were streams of water flowing in the cave, and there were pools. If the animal hit the water and survived, then the gods were happy or appeased. If the animal drowned, then the gods were not happy. That was the general pagan practice that went on at the very place that Jesus had his disciples standing there. So there were elaborate temples here during the time of Christ. Pan, Zeus, Nemesis, which I didn't realize there was a god Nemesis worshipped here. And a sanctuary to the dancing goats was also there. Pan was the god of the goats as well. His pipe music would entice the goats to dance, and it ensured fertility among his people, if you can imagine. That was going on there too. A little more digging on this, I found out it said it was such a wicked place that in the Sin City, that the rabbis forbid the Jews to go there. And Jesus took his disciples there. So you can imagine right away, he was already violating some of the standard norms of its time. He brought his disciples there anywhere and revealed there that, in a sense, that he was the Messiah. Right? I mean, Peter did. That was the first real revelation, at least the first recorded revelation, that he was the Christ, the Son of the living God. That was in contrast to all the dead gods that were there. See, that's That's the significance of this revelation. I'm sure if you really had the time to dig this out, you would find out that they were very aware, the disciples were more than likely very aware of what this place was. My guess. I mean, practically it would make sense.
Probably pretty uncomfortable.
Yes, imagine. It's also, they believe it's also the site in Matthew 17 of the Transfiguration. So two major scriptural historic events took place here. His revelation of who he was, and they're pretty sure the Transfiguration took place right towards Mount Hermon, same location. In a couple articles I read, they called it Satan's turf. So in other words, he was breaking the rule and the authority of Satan over mankind. So there was more significance here than what kind of meets the eye here. Today, they say today that it's the caves and it's in the temples are still there. It's in rubble, but it's all still there today. How many years later? 2,000, 3,000 years. They're carved into the cliffs of white ivory. It's got to be a pretty spectacular place. So the ancients had certain beliefs, and actually some called it the gates of Hades. And isn't it ironic that when Jesus said, the gates of Hades shall not prevail? So you could see the connection he was making with the disciples. They probably knew exactly what he was saying, let alone that he revealed himself as the Son, Son of God, the Son of the living God, right? That's key there. The Christ, the Anointed One, the Son of the living God. So if you look at the two maps here, if you look on the one on the right, you can see a modern map, or a somewhat graphical map, of the Golan Heights region that was taken by Israel in 1967. If you remember the Seven-Day War, kind of a famous historic war. And there's been a number of conflicts in that region from Israel and the Syrians. 1973, they fought in that region. 2 wars, I think there were 3 wars actually in 73, vicious wars. Israel dominated the Syrians at that time. The map on the left, you could kind of see where its location is in Israel, above the Sea of Galilee, north of Galilee. So it's, it's ironic, just kind of in closing here, that the Lord said to Peter, on this rock I will build my church. Right? Obviously he's referring to the revelation of Christ, not the physical rock, but the significance of this is really remarkable. On this rock, on what rock? Because some have believed the physical rock, but obviously Christ was referring to the revelation of his Son as the Christ. That's the rock he's going to build his church upon. And the gates of Hades shall not overcome it, right? So in other words, they're right there at the gates of Hades, in a sense. And I just put a note here, how perfect that one of the most sinful places in Israel was where he revealed himself to be the true God of Israel. Kind of an interesting contrast. And I think that's it. I don't know, just a little introduction for a few. So I don't know, any prayer requests for tonight? Anything we have to?